In this video, I will demonstrate how to create an installer in Visual Studio 2012. First, let's create a demo project, and we can call this we can create this as a standard Windows application. It's fine, and we can accept all the default values for this. So let's say this is our application that we wish to create an installer for, and let's place some sort of a button on here just so it looks like it does something. And we'll call this message box show. Okay, so this is let's say this is our application right here. And so in Visual Studio 2010, what you used to be able to do is to right-click, Add New Project, and here under Other Project Types, there was a Setup and Deployment project type that was a Visual Studio based setup and deployment type. But here you can clearly see that the only option here is to enable InstallShield Limited Edition, also known as the InstallShield Lite Edition. So if I double click on that, it brings up the following browser window, which essentially says download the InstallShield Lite Edition, and it really wants you to enter registration information. So let's go ahead and do that quickly. So once you have the information filled out, just click on Download Now. Oh, well, let's put a slightly different phone number. And once you submit the form, it will allow you to finally download this software, which will take a few minutes. Now, interestingly enough, you actually have to close Visual Studio here and exit out in order for InstallShield to actually function. So okay, so once this is done, we can run the installer, which will then walk us through the installation process. So next, accept the agreement, and the default installation is fine. Give it a moment for the security prompt to come up. It's always a joy to sit through that. And finally it starts installing. So it's kind of a slow installation process, unfortunately. And surprisingly, there's not a whole lot of files being installed. It's just very, very slow. And finally, the installation has finished, and it has updated Visual Studio with the latest version of InstallShield Lite. Now, I don't have any affiliation with InstallShield whatsoever, and to be honest, I'm not very fond of it either. But the old Visual Studio Solution installer project type is gone. So there's no such thing in Visual Studio 2012. The only thing that comes close to it is the InstallShield Lite Edition, which does something similar. So with that having said that, let's fire back Visual Studio again. And we'll bring up the demo Windows application that we just created. So let's bring up our little application here again. Which is also very, very slow. So here it is again. So now if we try to add a new project again, the first time that you try to bring up the new project screen, you may have to wait several minutes to have it come up. And this is probably due to the installer, the project type that InstallShield has added, which has to be set up the first time it's run. And finally, a year later, you will get your new project screen. So now if you click on Setup and Deployment, under Other Project Types, you'll see that the InstallShield Limited Edition project type is available for us. So let's create a setup project. Sure, setup 2 is fine. Well, let's give it a more descriptive name, maybe was Forms Application Installer. Maybe put a 2 in here. Really, I mean, you can call it whatever you want, really, it doesn't matter. So if the other screen that you will undoubtedly see is this Activate or Register for Free Copy of InstallShield screen. And when you select Activate, it asks you for a whole serial number. It will actually bring up the browser. Well, it was supposed to actually bring up the browser. And the serial number should be here somewhere. They actually email it to you, I believe. So you just have to enter the serial number that they email you in this box and click Activate. And I obviously skipped the actual activation code just so people don't copy my activation code. So hit Finish here, and it should resume creating the setup project for you. And this is really it. This is the wizard essentially that replaced the built-in setup project. So here I've got some buttons at the bottom here. So specify your company name. Let's specify our company name. This is my company here. Application name is fine. I need to change my link here, and click on the next step. Now here, what operating systems do I want to target? I do want to have specific operating systems. I no longer support Windows 2000. I'm not particularly fond of Windows Vista either, but I'm going to leave that checked. The rest of them are fine. If I had any other software that I needed to install before installing my application, I could include it here, including .NET Framework versions listed here, or SQL Server Express Edition. But I don't for this application, so I'm just going to skip that. We don't have an installation architecture. As far as the application files, so here I want to add project outputs, and I want primary output, and I want to right click here on that entry and say resolve project output, and choose my main application executable here. You might have several assemblies here. You want to choose the main executable, and that's really it for this one. If you have any data, you can put it in the app data folder. If you have any common DLLs, libraries that you want to share between your applications, you can put that here as well. But really, this is essentially it. If you have any registry keys, you can select yes and add your registry keys here, which is pretty straightforward. Now on this main tab, there's a general information section. Yes, we do want to return. And here you can see some additional details, such as what's your product version. I'm not particularly fond of this version format, so I'm just going to call it 1.0.0. If I want to change the installation directory, right now install directory is pointing to program files folders, the name of my company, and the subfolder is my product name. We obviously don't want that, so let's call this Windows Forms Application 2 maybe, even though that's not a whole lot better, but it's better than what it was before. And then there's some additional information here that you can fill out, such as support information, product URL, and that sort of thing, which you can obviously also do. So once I am happy here, let's see, getting started, project assistant. Okay, so once I'm happy here, I'll click on installation interview. Do you want to display a license agreement dialog? Right now set to yes. You don't obviously have to. Do you want to prompt the user to enter their company name and username? No, I really don't. And then really just click on this button down here, and that's really it as far as the actual installation steps are concerned. So if I right click here and build the solution right now, it should create an output for me. And if we look at that folder, one last thing that you may run across is long file path when you're trying to create the installer. The installer program is actually not very smart. So in this case, because I saved the project in my documents folder, it's complaining that it is too long and it cannot create as many subfolders as the InstallShield is attempting to do. So a way to go around it is to it's actually very simple. To close the project solution, and then I'm going to come over here where my project is, and I'm going to cut it from here, and I'm going to move it to somewhere on my C drive, and paste it just so I can continue. And I'm going to paste it here. So now it should have enough of a shorter project namespace to be able to do what we were attempting to do. So we're going to open the project solution from its new location, and bring up the project again. So let's right click on it and clean the solution first, just to make sure there's no residue files from our previous attempt, and then let's rebuild the solution. So it should hopefully run through this time, and sure enough, the rebuild has been successful. So if we open the folder in Explorer, now we see that there's our setup project here, and there should be some install files here. Here it is. So that's the other thing. I never really understood why they felt obligated to go so many layers deep with this installer file. But it's actually here under disk image disk 1. This is actually what you want. And just if you just see the path length here is just ridiculously long, and I cannot think of any reason why they should have had to go this many levels deep. But the good news is, here are your installer files. Here's the installer MSI, and really all you have to do is distribute these files, the setup exe, setup ini, and the Windows application installer MSI. On Windows platforms, you could just technically just double click on the MSI and it should bring up the installer for me. And it's a standard installer. You can walk through it next, and as you can see, my company name is where the actual main project folder is, followed by the name of the application that I specified. And it goes through and it installs it and finish, and that's really it. It now installed the application for us. I hope that you found this tutorial useful. Feel free to leave comments or questions that you may have. Be very specific, and I'll try to give you specific answers. Thank you.